What's going on, guys? Before we get into today's review, please don't forget to subscribe to our channel or you will miss us talking about all this stuff. And I will tell you what all that stuff is later in this video. And now, here we go. What's going on, everybody? If you don't know who I am, my name is Brandon and I am the founder of Gearist.com, and today we are going to be taking a look at the first ever pair of Inov-8 trail running shoes, and that is the Trailroc 285 from Inov-8. Now, the first thing that I would like to say is that if you don't know how to spell this, you spell it INOV-8, like the number 8, like, you know, the infinity symbol, but turned upright, kind of like the infinity symbol is the 8 turned sideways. Never mind. Kind of recently, I had a conversation with somebody from the UK who was actually going on a trail run here in Colorado where we were based, and he was wearing a pair of Inov-8 running shoes. And he was actually kind of lamenting the fact that while Inov-8 was super popular in their homeland of Great Britain or the UK, they weren't really here in America. And I assured him that while it may not seem like they have the penetration of some larger brands, obviously, they still are a brand that has a very cult-like following here. Now, with that being the case, you would have thought that we would have gotten our hands on a pair of these shoes sooner, but you'd be wrong. Now, that being said, this guy right here is the first time I ever had my chance to truly run and truly test a pair of Inov-8 running shoes, and I was super excited to do so. Based out of Crook in County Durham in the UK, Inov-8 is one of those brands that really makes an effort to keep runners and athletes in touch with the ground. Not only do they make a really spectacular line of running shoes that it's really pretty diverse from trail to road to technical trail and all the things in between, but they actually also make a lot of shoes that people like in the CrossFit market. But since we're not talking about CrossFit today, we are talking about trail running, so let's get into talking about this guy. As always, the first thing that we're going to talk about is the outsole of the shoe. However, before I get into that, I would like to give you guys a bit of a primer, or a primer, as it were, on where the naming system, the naming setup of Inov-8 running shoes comes from. Now, this is called the Trailroc 285, and what that refers to is the weight in grams of the sample size of the shoe, which would be a men's size 9. That shoe comes in at 285 grams. Now, this shoe right here, my men's size 11, comes in at 310 grams, which is right about 11 ounces. Now, getting into the outsole of this guy, we find that Inov-8 has used their proprietary Tri-C sticky rubber system. What that means is that down here on the heel, we have got the hardest rubber. It's basically made of 3 different types of rubber. Here on the heel, we've got the hardest rubber running right up the middle here in a place that doesn't usually see as much friction as the perimeter of the shoes or the heel. We see the softest rubber, and this is so obviously it can grab the most. And then kind of here around the perimeter, we've got kind of a medium grade rubber, all of which are meant to work with this lug system to be the stickiest possible. Speaking of those lugs, the lug layout, as you can see right there, these are 86 lugs on my men's size 11. Trust me, I counted them. These 86 lugs are actually called studs by Inov-8. They're 4 millimeters deep and spaced so as to not really collect a lot of debris. I mean, if you look at them there, you can see that there's not really anywhere for much debris to get caught. In addition to that, the sheer amount of lugs is something that Inov-8 came up with in order to additionally add some more cushion to the landing of the shoe. So you've got more kind of surface area in the lug department with which to really allow that energy going into the ground to dissipate. Now, this shoe is meant for rocky, hard-packed trail. It's not necessarily a muddy trail shoe. It's not necessarily a deep, technical, loose terrain shoe, but it can handle some more rocky terrain that is pretty technical. But out of the box, I decided to not really take it on a run. I actually decided to take it up the 14,255 foot tall Longs Peak, which is the highest peak in Rocky Mountain National Park, and it's actually more of a hike. And actually, as you get kind of toward the summit, it's actually just straight up climbing. Now, where the first several miles are indeed a hike up some rocky and dirt, hard-packed terrain, once you get to the boulder field up toward the top at about 13,000 or so feet, that becomes something that is actually much more technical. And I thought that that was a really great place to put this rubber as well as the shoe to the test. In fact, I actually played a game with myself where I tried to see how long, this is once we hit the boulder field, to see how long I could go with my hands in my pockets, just trusting the rubber, trusting the traction of this shoe. And this is actually a challenge. If you've ever done the boulder field on Longs Peak, then you know that this is not like you're just going over, like horizontally over large boulders. You're climbing at like a 45+ degree angle in some places. And it wasn't until probably I don't know, 10, 15 yards from the top to from the keyhole, I should say, that I actually had to use my hands. And I was really proud of myself, number one, but I was also really impressed by this rubber setup and the lugs. Now, while on more traditional trails and you know, when I was actually running and stuff like that, I actually found the traction of this very similar to some other shoes, which have opted, as of late, for less kind of cleat-like lugs and more plentiful lugs, less larger lugs that take up more area on the bottom of the shoe, and something that's more adaptive and can really roll over differing terrain, not by virtue of having like big lugs that are multi-directional, all kinds of weird polygons, but by virtue of having small lugs that are where there's a lot of them. Now, certainly while both can be good, and I really liked the traction of this a lot on the terrain that it's meant for, that rocky and hard-packed terrain, I really do enjoy this smaller lug. It's more nimble on a lot of things. Now, of course, it's not going to be able to handle some of the things that some deeper lugs might be able to handle, like some looser terrain and things like that, but that's not necessarily meant for this. As far as durability, and as I talk about this, I think I've got right around 50 miles on this shoe. I really don't notice too much wear. Of course, there is some wear. You see some chipping here and there, but it's really insignificant, and it's more just kind of cuts in the rubber as opposed to the rubber breaking down. So which tells me that this is a place where really sharp, almost knife-like angular rocks got in there. But in general, I could easily see the rubber on this shoe going for 400 plus miles for me. Now that's for me, not necessarily for you, so please take that for what it's worth. As we move into the midsole of this material, this is made of the company, that's Inov-8. It's made of their PowerFlow Plus material. Now this is meant to, as the company says, deliver 10% more shock absorption with 25% more energy return than traditional midsoles or standard midsoles. Now, assuming that what they mean by standard midsoles is a straight up standard EVA, that's actually a pretty good thing, and that's something that a lot of shoe companies have been striving for lately, and really making a compound out of their midsole rather than straight up EVA, which can break down pretty easily over time. Stack heights in this shoe are 21.5 millimeters in the heel and 13.5 millimeters in the forefoot for a net drop of 8 millimeters. Embedded in the midsole is Inov-8's dynamic fascia band rock play. Now, apart from keeping your foot protected from various and sundry pokey things underfoot, this also is meant to flex with the foot and then provide a little bit of pop. Now, if you've read or watched my reviews anytime in the past, then you probably know that I'm kind of a fan of a more minimal-ish geometry. That's not to say that I want necessarily something all the time that's right on the ground. I'm not going to be going out running in Vibram 5 fingers all the time. However, I do like something that puts me a little bit more in touch with the ground. Now, what's interesting about this shoe is that its stack and geometry actually belie what it feels like when you put it on and how it functions. Now, by just looking at it, you might think that it's really pretty close to the ground and the ride might be a little bit harsh, but I did not notice that at all. Now, maybe that is what I mentioned in the outsole section a second ago, the number of lugs adding additional cushioning to the foot falling on the ground. Maybe that's it, or maybe it's just that PowerFlow Plus material, but either way, I found the ground feel to be excellent, but the ride also not super harsh. And when this is calling for a shoe that can go on rocky and hard-packed terrain, you want something that's not going to allow you to get too beat up over time. Now, of course, on super angular stuff, that might be a little bit different. You're going to feel more things underfoot, but in general, when you want to put some speed to it, especially on groomed single track and things like that, you're going to have a really great ground feel with a peppy shoe that's not super harsh. On my long hike slash run slash scramble up Longs Peak that I told you guys about a second ago, this actually really held up very well. And you know, there's some pretty technical terrain once you get to the boulder field, but this thing kept my foot pretty in check. I was really quite impressed. Now, while I didn't make the summit that day due to weather and things like that, I really did enjoy this shoe the entire time. And this is, we're talking about a 5-hour hike or so. Something, by the way, I don't recommend taking a shoe out of the box and then doing that, but this is something that I found to be up to the task. And I really do feel that if you're somebody who's looking for that underfoot protection but doesn't really want a hugely bulky shoe underfoot, this might be a good option to take a look at. As we move into the upper, the main body of the Trailroc 285 is made from a dual layer mesh, which on the inside is not seamless. Now, the seams that are there are really, it's clear that attention was paid to make sure they were really lay flat and feel good against the foot. Now, I normally don't take trail shoes, especially out on sockless jogs, but I did decide to take this out. Granted, it was just on kind of a dirt path. It's right over here, but I did feel very comfortable. It did not aggravate my feet, so if you are somebody who likes to wear no socks while you're running on trails, then you may very well be comfortable in this. The support structure of this guy, as we can see here, is actually kind of a rand that goes around the foot, rand being this thing right around here that actually goes back into the Met Cradle Plus. The Met Cradle Plus is actually an extension of those bonded overlays, and it's actually a little bit of a beefier mesh you can see right there. It actually almost looks like the Adidas stripes, but it's not because there are 5 of them, right? 4 of them right there, so it's not Adidas or Adidas. And what this does is it actually ties really well the midsole down here under the upper all the way up into the lace eyelets, and this is really reinforcing that structure of the upper there and the security of fit. As we flip this shoe around, we can see that the heel counter here has actually been removed from the inside of the shoe and brought to the outside. So we've got an external heel counter right here, which, you know, interesting concept. I'll talk more about it in a second. And then rounding out the structure of the shoe, we've got up here this toe cap that you can see, this nice bright orange toe cap, which does just protect the toes. Now, obviously it's called a toe cap. Yes, it just protects the toes. But why am I mentioning this? Well, some toe caps might extend back. Some toe caps go up and over the top a little bit. It really depends on what they want, if they want to sacrifice some weight. In this case, I found this to be plenty for what I was doing. The only time that I noticed anything is if I were kind of coming around and caught my foot like on the side like this, which it would have to be much more full toe cap for myself to be protected from that, or I just have to learn to not be a klutz. I have beaten the literal hell out of these shoes. Now, of course, some of you guys are going to be like, no, you didn't. I can really beat the hell out of a shoe. Well, listen, for the 55 miles that I've got on it, I just checked my notes, it is 55 miles. For the 55 miles I've got on it, there's really nothing to speak of. There's a little pick on the other shoe. There's a little pick on the fabric, but it's really nothing. I mean, it's not like where my toe is breaking through or anything like that. It just looks like I caught a cactus or the underside of a really sharp rock or something like that. And it's not, I mean, you have to like look down to find it. So it's really insignificant, and I'm very impressed with that. I also found this to be really quite breathable. Now, the one exception to that is where the Met Cradle Plus comes in. This beefier mesh, which we can see kind of right here, and if we look on the medial side, it's right there. That, while adding some structural stability and some more integrity to the upper to keep the foot in place and add structural integrity to the shoe from a construction standpoint, that also limits the breathability in that area just a tiny bit. Not enough to be a deal breaker, certainly not because you've got the front third of the foot, which is wide open and breathable, but right in here, it just kind of cuts it down a little bit. The security of the upper in this was really nice for me. I felt that it held up very well, and the one thing that I would say is that I found myself having to stop a little bit into a run a couple of times to just kind of tighten and readjust the laces. This is something that I notice a lot as the foot and the materials start to heat up and work together, so it's not a big deal for me. The toe cap did a pretty decent job, and I will say about this external heel counter right here, it's not something that I was really hung up on. I mean, internal heel counters really don't bother me, but I would assume that if you're looking for much more kind of smooth construction on the inside of that heel cup right there, you're probably going to find it because you're taking whatever structure was inside and bringing it to the outside and just relying on the smooth mesh foam combination on the inside to take care of your foot. Now, as we start to talk about the fit of this shoe, the one thing that I was very curious about, with this being my first try in a pair of Inov-8s, was how is it going to fit on my very American foot? We all know that some clothing and then shoes, especially shoes, where a lot of times Euro shoes tend to be much narrower in some cases. Not all cases, you guys, before I get comments and letters and all that stuff, but there's a difference in fit, and we all know this. So I was wondering, with the positive reception this had received in America, if it was something that my very average foot would really like, or if it was something that I was going to have a hard time. I was going to be like, oh, this is such a Euro fit. Well, I am happy to report that, first of all, in terms of sizing, this 11 fit my very US size 11 very well. It's exactly where I would expect US standards to be, with no big deal at all. Now, as we move into the toe box right here, it's nice and roomy, not overly roomy, not swimmy. Obviously, as I talk about most running shoes, you could see a little bit of additional room right over here on the lateral side, but it's not a huge deal. I really liked the way that it fit, and my toes didn't feel pinched even when descending or anything like that. As we move to the midfoot right about here, this is actually a place that I really liked. That Met Cradle Plus does a great job of really holding the foot in place. And again, while this was the place where I felt my foot loosening up and had to retighten those laces, I do felt like it did retighten and did hold my foot in place once I'd done that. Now, as I move into the heel, this was actually one of my favorite places on the shoe. Now, while again, the external heel counter wasn't really a thing for me, I didn't necessarily feel that it stood out to me. what I will say is that the heel lockdown, my heel staying in the shoe and not as you move forward, you know, sometimes you go through this part of the gait, you feel your heel kind of lift out of there. I didn't feel any of that at all. It was very comfortable and felt very nicely held in place. Now, as far as widths, this comes in a pretty standard width, a standard D width men's, B width women's. I will say that I do not think that this comes in a wide. I didn't see it anywhere. So with that being the case, if you've got a narrow or a wide foot, and if you've worn Inov-8s, whether it's this shoe or another shoe from Inov-8, I would love to hear from you down in the comments of this video or in the comments of our website over at Gearist.com. Now guys, before we get into the ride of this shoe and how it actually performed in those trails, I want to give you guys a sneak peek of a couple things that are upcoming. Number one, this is the Horizon KTV from Under Armour. I'm very excited about this shoe. We've got this on my foot, we've got this on the foot of Tanya, and actually what's interesting is relative to talking about the Trailroc 285, which you're talking about right now, you can see that the lug system on this guy is actually quite similar. A lot of lugs that are small and not super deep and cleaty. Something else I'm super excited to talk about because it is getting to be winter. It's fall right now, 2017, and winter is on the way, believe it or not, folks. So if you're a cyclist or a runner or you do both, I'm very excited to talk to you guys about this jacket right here. This is going to be coming up in just a few weeks. This is actually meant to be a cycling piece from Louis Garneau. I can't remember the name, but stick around, you know, subscribe to our channel so you can hear us talk about it. We get that four-way stretch. It's awesome, good stuff. And the last little sneak peek I'm going to show you guys won't actually be out, I don't think, until next spring, maybe not even next fall, maybe. This is the follow-up, the sequel, if you will, to the Vazzy Summit number 2 from New Balance, and that is the Summit Unknown from New Balance. Booyah! Now, if you want to see reviews of those shoes and that jacket and a whole bunch of other stuff that's coming, please be sure to subscribe to our channel so you can. And now, let's get into talking about the ride of this shoe right here, the Trailroc 285 from Inov-8. Now, in the ride of this shoe, I actually found that I wanted to group it in with a couple other shoes. I wanted to find a place where I could compare it for you guys about things that I've talked about in the past. And one of the things that kept coming to mind over and over as I was running this shoe is some of the shoes from Topo Athletic. Now, with those shoes, I've used the words quiet elegance or simple elegance here and there, and that is simply one of the phrases that keeps coming up into my mind with this shoe. It's a shoe that it's not trying to do too much, it's not trying to get in your way, it's not trying to control your foot, it just kind of is. And in that way, it's really a high-performance shoe that is based around your foot and the energy that you give to it. Now, the Trailroc 285 does have excellent ground feel, but I would say that if you are somebody who's looking for a beefier shoe with a lot more material underfoot, this is probably not going to be the shoe for you. However, if you're open-minded and willing to say, well, I would like a beefier shoe, but I'm really just looking for the cushion of that beefier shoe, maybe this is something that you could try out because, again, while it has good ground feel, it's not harsh. And whether, again, it's the lugs or the midsole material or whatever is going on in here, it really does a nice job of holding you out over those long miles. Now, over those long miles, if you're going over loose and really super technical terrain, is this going to do the same amount of performance as something with more cleat-like lugs? No, it's not. It's not built to do that. This is meant to be on hard, pack, rocky terrain. It's something that's going to handle that, and you get this on single track, whew, forget about it. And now we come to the price of the Inov-8 Trailroc 285, and this is something that is a little bit of a detractor for me, and it comes in at $150. Now, before you go skipping away, let me say a couple things about this. The number one thing is that where I think people are going to have a hang up is they're going to feel a shoe like this that has a very simple feel and ride, which I really like and I think is a plus and a bonus of this shoe. You're going to feel that simple ride and you're going to go, wow, I'm not feeling bells and whistles that would possibly validate a $150 price. And for you, that may very well be the case, and that's okay. Now, with that said, I will encourage you to check down in the description below because we do always look for lower prices on the shoe, and I can tell you for sure that we have found this for lower prices. So if you click those links down in the description of this video below, you will be able to find it for a little bit cheaper. Now, is it worth that price tag? It really depends on the person. And I really feel that if you had a $25 lower price tag on this, that it might get so many more people into it that it would kind of erase the loss in margin. This is a good shoe and something that I'm really happy to have tested for my first pair of Inov-8 running shoes. Now, I do have another pair of Inov-8s in the pipeline, so be sure to subscribe to our channel because that way you can see when those come up. That is something that is a little more light duty that's going to really excel on that single track type stuff. As for this guy, I can't wait to see how this shoe evolves and becomes even better over time, or just kind of expands into an entirely new place in its lineup. And as always, if you've tried this or any Inov-8 shoes, I would love to hear from you guys down in the comments of this video, so leave a comment down there, or if you'd like to shoot an email to info@gearist.com, we would always like to hear from you. Now guys, at this point in every video, we ask for your feedback because I want to hear your feedback to the question of the day. That is why we ask it. But before we do, I want to ask you to please go down and subscribe to our channel. That means a lot to us. It's how we keep things going here at Gearist. It's how we keep the lights on. If you see those buy links, those affiliate links on our website down in the description of this video, when you guys click those, it really helps to power Gearist. We get a little love from the retailers, and you still get the amazing low prices that we can find for you guys. So thank you for that. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for following on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, what have you. Just follow us. We would like that a lot. Communicate with us, talk to us, all that kind of stuff. Now, as for our question of the day, when you're looking for a trail shoe, something that's meant for a rocky hardpack like the Trailroc 285, do you look for something that's going to provide cushion underfoot, whether or not it's thick stack or more minimal stack like this is? Let us know down in the comments section below. Thank you guys so much for spending a few minutes with us today. If you've got any questions at all, please don't hesitate to reach out. Now get out there, get sweaty, and we will see you next time.